Today we are going to learn about transdermal drug delivery system. So we try to see what are its parts and how it is manufactured, what are the factors affecting for drug absorption. Then at last we try to see about how to evaluate this transdermal drug delivery system. So as per the definition, what is transdermal drug delivery system? Instead of reading out the definition, I'll try to explain what is this. Okay, so as the name says, transdermal, so we are applying on the skin. Dermal is skin, so on the skin we are applying this delivery system, hence the name is coined as transdermal drug delivery system. So it will be like a simple patch which can be stick to the skin, and from where the drug will be delivered in controlled fashion over a period of time. Okay, so that what is your transdermal drug delivery system. Now what are its advantages? Why we are using transdermal drug delivery system? Okay, if you want to use the drug for over extended period of time, just stick that trans drug delivery system and you will get a delivery for about 5 or 6 days or 1 week. So no need of taking tablet again and again. So if you are in a continuous medication, we can take that can stick one transdermal drug delivery system on the skin and it will deliver the drug over a period of time. Then it also increases the therapeutic value of many drugs by avoiding the problem associated with the drug. Like if the drug is a gastric irritant, so we can't give the drug in oral route. Hence the transdermal delivery is a good route for that drug, because we are avoiding the gastric irritation, as well as first pass metabolism is being avoided. Then it is a patient compliance. Okay, inter and intra patient variability can be minimized. Inter patient variability between the patients. If you give same drug in the dosage form like tablet to two different persons, there will be variation. Or same person taking same tablet in different timings, and also it will cause variation in the drug delivery. Let's say same person is taking the tablet without food and with food. So we can avoid this inter and intra within the person variation by using transdermal drug delivery system, and it is a self medication. Okay, we have to peel that and we have to stick that on our skin. Then you can terminate the drug delivery at any point of time. Just take out that transdermal drug delivery. You can terminate the drug delivery at any point of time. This is the beauty of this transdermal drug delivery system. So it will bypass your first pass metabolism. Okay, there will be constant drug levels. Okay, let's say this is your plasma concentration and time. The drug level will be maintained constant within the therapeutic window over a prolonged period of time. Then self administration is possible and unrestricted patient activity. Just stick that patch anywhere on the skin and patient can do normal activities what he is doing in his daily life. So what are the disadvantages of that transdermal drug delivery system? So disadvantages: drug must have desired physiochemical properties to be given in the form of transdermal drug delivery system. It means drug should have some type of physical and chemical properties such that these characters only suitable for designing the drug into transdermal drug delivery system. Then we have skin irritation and contact dermatitis due to the excipients and enhancers of the drugs used to increase the percutaneous absorption is other limitation. So what this point is saying, we are using some excipients which will increase the enhancing drug permeation enhancers. We call it as a drug permeation enhancers. Okay, through the skin drug can't permeate. If it is not permeating, we use some permeating enhancers. These permeating enhancers will cause skin irritation and dermatitis. So that is one problem. Then we have skin has a barrier for the permeation of the drug. So it will vary with person to person and with the ages. So skin structure and skin barrier will vary, the thickness of the skin and what are all the barriers which are available in the skin for the drug to be permeated. It will be different in different ages, as well as it will be different for different persons. So there is one problem. You are designing a patch for all the people at a time, but this patch has a limitation because the skin of the person will be different. With there will be variation in the skin texture or anything between the persons as well as within the person has the age progress. Then we have heat, cold, sweating and showering prevent the patch from sticking to the surface. Obviously, if sweating is there, if you stick the patch, due to that water, that patch will be not sticking because there is a sweating. The patch will not stick to the skin. Okay, and daily we have to apply new patch. The patch fall off during bath and sleep. Maybe patch is falling off during bath and sleep. Then we have patch fall off completely during bath or swimming. Same thing, same point. Okay, slight movement and sweating will cause the patch to not stick. Okay, these are the disadvantages of the transdermal drug delivery system. Then we will see what is the structure of the skin. Just to introduction, I am just telling you what is the structure of the skin. So anatomically, skin has many histological layers. They divide into three layers. One is epidermis, dermis and subcutaneous tissue. Okay. You can see this diagram where we have epidermis, we have subcutaneous tissue and also we have dermis. So these are the layers which you can see here. So on the epidermis outer side we are going to stick our transdermal drug delivery system. Okay, we see how the drug permeates through the skin. So drug absorption can be occur in three ways. One is transepidermal absorption, transfollicular absorption, then we have clearance by local circulation. So you can see here in this diagram, so we have intercellular route. The first one is intercellular. Between the cells drug is going to pass. Next other side we have transcellular route, that is within the cell. So drug can permeate through these two processes. Okay, intercellular and transcellular. Next we have transepidermal absorption. What we see here, stratum corneum is the main resistance for the transepidermal absorption. Permeation involves partitioning of the drug into the stratum corneum. So what happens, you have a stratum corneum here, we are applying our patch here. Drug has to permeate through the stratum corneum, that is your transepidermal permeation. Drug has to first get distributed, okay, or partitionate between what? Between your stratum corneum and transdermal drug delivery system. Drug has to first partitionate between stratum corneum and transdermal drug delivery system. Then only it will penetrate through the skin. The first barrier is stratum corneum. Permeation through skin depends upon oil and water distribution tendency of the drug. Lipophilic drug concentrate in the and diffuse with relatively ease. Because stratum corneum, we have many lipid layers in our skin. Okay, lipophilic drug can pass through the skin very easily. Permeation through dermis is through interlocking channels of the ground substance. Okay, through dermis it can permeate through the interlocking channels. Transfollicular, here we have the skin appendages, subcutaneous and eccrine glands are considered as shunts for bypassing the stratum corneum. Okay, what is happening here? We are bypassing the stratum corneum. How we are bypassing the stratum corneum? Through your skin appendages. The follicular route is most important for permeation because the opening of the follicular pore is relatively large and sebum aids in the diffusion of penetration. See, in the follicular route, obviously follicular route we have large opening. Here we will be having a hair. Assume this is a hair. Okay, drug, because this is a large opening, it is the main route for the drugs to permeate. Okay, through this follicular route. Partitioning into sebum followed by diffusion to the depths of the epidermis is the mechanism how it is going to penetrate drug. Okay, let's say we have follicular opening, we have a hair here. Okay, hair which is coming out. Now what happens, your drug, we have sebum here. Sebum is that secreted into the hair follicle. Sebum, drug has to first partitionate between your drug delivery, transdermal drug delivery and sebum. You can ask me, sir, how hair is there, how the drug is passing? That is the one disadvantage. If the hair is more, then we have a problem for the drug to penetrate. So whatever the drug is there, first it will penetrate. So whatever the drug is there, it will partitionate between drug delivery system, transdermal drug delivery and sebum. Then it will go through the epidermis. Okay. Then finally we have clearance by local circulation. So as soon as the drug enters to the local circulation, it will be cleared off because in the blood vessels, blood will be constant moving. Okay. Then factors affecting skin permeation. What are the factors which affecting permeation of the drug to the skin? One is age. Okay. The people are in generally what we try to do in the clinical trials, we take a ideal person. Okay, with the age of let's say 25 or something. Now what happens, his skin structure will be different compared to a person who is having more age. So if the age is more, the skin will become more if the age is more, the skin will become more thick and we face a problem of the drug to be penetrated to the skin. So age is one factor. Second, blood flow. If the blood flow is more in the skin area where you have been stick your transdermal drug delivery system, there will be more penetration of the drug. Okay. Now what happens, as age passes, the flow of the blood to the skin will decrease. These also depends on the age. Okay. Next, we have thickness of stratum corneum. The stratum corneum is thickness is more. For some people it is having more thickness, for some people it will be less thickness. So for the people who are having a stratum corneum with a less thickness, then the permeation of the drug will be more because the barrier is very less. Next, we have presence of hair follicles. So more hair follicles, again problem. Then injury or trauma to the skin. Then hydration of the skin. If the skin is get well hydrated, then what happens, lipophilic drug face problem in the penetration. Then humidity and temperature will also affect your skin texture. Chemical exposure to the skin, so you have exposed the skin to the chemical previously, or chronic use of certain drugs at the, let's say I am using some drug here at this part of the skin, I applied a transdermal drug delivery system previously. Now that use is over, so I took off the drug delivery system. Again I am using some other drug as a transdermal and applying at the same area where I previously applied drug. Now what happens, because that skin is exposed to that drug and obviously the chemical or something is being changed in the skin, this change will not allow for my drug to penetrate normally as it would be. So we should take care, if you are using a patch, different drugs, apply at different places. Don't use at the same place because it has been previously exposed to your drug. Now we will see what are the basic components of transdermal drug delivery system. What we will do, we will take, first we have drug. Now in this drug we will try to mix some polymers. Okay, polymers. Then because drug is not penetrating through the skin, we try to add permeation enhancers. And we have other excipients. Okay, these are the basic components. We have drug, we have polymers. The polymers can be, we have sticky polymers or non-sticky polymers. Then we have permeation enhancers. Okay, these are the basic components of your transdermal drug delivery. What we will do, we take this drug, mix with the polymer, mix with the permeation enhancers, and we try to give in the form of transdermal drug delivery system. We will see one by one what is that. Okay, polymer matrix. See about the polymers. The properties of these polymers. One by one we will try to see that. So what are the properties of those polymers to be used as transdermal drug delivery system? So what we are going to see here is, what are the properties should that polymer contain which will be used for transdermal drug delivery system. So main thing is, this polymer should not react with the drug. Compatibility should be there. One. Second point, the drug the polymer, if at all it is degrading, the degraded product should not interact or it should not be toxic. So if at all polymer is degrading, we don't want it to be toxic. Then the mechanical properties of the polymer should not deteriorate excessively. We want that polymer, if at all I am using a polymer which is having sticky property, that is a mechanical property of the polymer which I have used in the transdermal drug delivery system. I want that polymer to stick there onto the skin for over a long period of time. I don't want that mechanical property to be deteriorate very quickly, because I am taking the drug for 7 days, 1 week or 2 weeks. So I don't want that to happen. Okay, next, what are the examples of the polymers we are using there? The natural, we have cellulose derivatives, zine, gelatin, shellac, wax, okay, gums, etc. Synthetic, we have polybutadiene, hydrogen rubber, polysiloxane, silicone rubber, etc. And also that is synthetic elastomers. Synthetic polymers, we have polyvinyl chloride, polyethylene, we have polypropylene, polyacrylate, etc. to be used in the transdermal drug delivery system. Now we will see what are the properties of the drugs to be used as a transdermal drug delivery system. What property does the drug should contain to be used as a, for the drug candidate to be used as a transdermal drug delivery system. We can't use all drugs to be passed through the skin, or we can't incorporate whatever the drug available in the market into the transdermal drug delivery system. The drug should have some properties. So we try to see what are those properties. So the physiochemical and biological properties of the drug we are going to see, which is used for this type of property the drug should contain to be incorporated into transdermal drug delivery system. The physicochemical properties are: it is generally accepted that the best drug candidates for passive adhesive transdermal patches must be, okay, must be how, what are the characteristics? Physiochemical, okay. The physicochemical properties are, it should be non-ionic. Okay, if it is purely ionic, the drug won't penetrate to the skin. Reason, skin we have many lipid barriers. So we want drug to have a particular partition coefficient so that it can partitionate between skin barriers and the transdermal drug delivery system. We don't want that to fully ionic. If it is ionic, it won't penetrate to the skin. That is the reason we don't want our drug to be ionic. So it should be non-ionic. One. Second, low molecular weight, less than 500 Dalton. If the drug is having more molecular weight, the drug can't penetrate through the skin barriers. Hence, we want our drug candidate with a weight of 500 Daltons to be incorporated in transdermal drug delivery system. Then adequate solubility, that what? Adequate partition coefficient in oil and water. Low melting point, okay, less than 200. Then we have potent. Obviously, we want our drug to be more potent because dose should be less than 50 mg per day. Then only we are going to use into the transdermal drug delivery. Let's say, assume that if the dose is 1 gram per day for the drug, for example, take paracetamol, it is 500 mg per time we are taking that paracetamol. Per day, if it is for 2 times, it will become 1 gram. The dose of the paracetamol will become 1 gram. Now, same paracetamol I have to give for 1 week. Then I have to incorporate 7 grams of paracetamol into transdermal drug delivery system, which is practically impossible. So, for a drug candidate to be incorporated into the transdermal drug delivery system, we want the drug to be more potent. The dose should be less. Then only we can incorporate more dose so that we can give the drug for over a period of time. Next, what are the biological properties? Okay, obviously one is drug should be potent. Half-life should be short because we are giving it as a controlled fashion. We want the drug to stay there for prolonged period of time. Okay, to achieve this sustained release or controlled release, we want our drug to have less half-life, because if the drug is having more half-life, already it is having itself controlled fashion. The drug itself is having more half-life. Then we are giving the drug in continuous form, then there is a chance of accumulation of the drug. So we don't want that drug to have more half-life. We want half-life of the drug to be less. Okay, then drug should not cause cutaneous irritation or allergic response, obviously. Then the drug which is inactivated in GIT or causing gastric irritant or undergoing excessive first power metabolism are good candidates for transdermal drug delivery system. So these are the properties of the drug which is required. Then only we can use the drug as transdermal drug, to design in the form of transdermal drug delivery system. Okay, then next we will see what are the properties of permeation enhancers. So what permeation enhancers will do, they will alter the skin barrier, okay, so that the drug will permeate through the skin easily. We assume the drug is passing through passive diffusion. First law of diffusion says flux is directly proportional to concentration gradient. What is flux? Change in mass or change in concentration per time per unit surface area, which is directly proportional to concentration gradient. If you remove this gradient, we will get a constant, that is diffusion, we keep negative. So this permeation enhancers will try to improve the flux of your drug. It will move the drug through the barrier by changing the properties of that skin barrier. So we will see what are the classifications of permeation enhancers. See here, we have solvents, then we have surfactants, binary system and miscellaneous chemicals. Solvents, we have alcohol, we have ethanol, okay, we have so many organic solvents which can use for permeation enhancers. Then we have surfactants. So anionic surfactant, we have sodium lauryl sulfate, non-ionic pluronic F127. Then bile salts, we have sodium taurocolate or sodium deoxycholate. These are the permeation enhancers. So what I am trying to say is, if the skin is like this, you try to apply surfactant there, you apply soap there. Now what happens? The soap will change the structure of the skin for limited period of time. When you wash that, it will go away, but it will change the structure for a limited period of time, and it will increase the permeation of drug into the skin. Then we have binary system, that is propylene glycol and oleic acid. Miscellaneous here, urea and calcium thioglycolate. These are the permeation enhancers we are going to use. Other excipients, okay, we have other excipients. What are those? Generally we use adhesives. If the drug is having adhesive property, okay, if the excipients which I am using, they should have, if I am using adhesives, I want that adhesive to be stick there. So I am using that adhesive in the transdermal drug delivery because we want that TDGS system to be stick onto the skin. Those adhesive systems should not cause irritation to the skin. It should adhere to the skin. Okay, it should be easily removed, and you should not leave any undesirable residue. When you are removing the patch, we don't want anything to be residue staying there. Okay, then so the adhesive should have the following properties. One is physically and chemically compatible with the drug excipient, that is polymer and permeation enhancer. Whatever adhesive you are using, it should compatible with all these three. Reason? Because we are pouring all these three on the adhesive, so we don't want that adhesive to be interaction. The adhesive should not cause any barrier or anything which can affect the permeation of the drug. So permeation enhancers should not, the delivery of the adhesive should not affect the permeation enhancers functional. Okay, what are the adhesives we are going to use? Examples for those adhesives is polymers used in adhesives are polyisobutylene, acrylic and silicones. Then finally what we are going to do, we take all this thing, we'll put this on a membrane, we call it as a backing membrane. Backing membrane. So we take this, we pour this on a backing membrane. What that backing membrane is made up of, how it is, we'll try to see that. So they are flexible and provide good bond to the drug reservoir, prevent the drug from leaving the dosage form through top. Okay, we pour this everything on the backing membrane like this. So this backing membrane should provide good physical properties to the drug polymer permeation enhancers and excipients. And this membrane should be impermeable and it should protect the drug from outer environment. Okay, so it should improve the shelf life of the drug. Okay, must be compatible with the formulation. Obviously the backing membrane which you are using should be impermeable and also it should protect the drug over a period of time. It should give good physical properties. Okay, and it should have it should be compatible with all the formulation, and also it should be printable. Use a backing membrane which is we should use that backing membrane which can be printable. If you can't print on the backing membrane, then gone. Examples are metallic plastic laminates. We have metal and plastic combination laminates, then only plastic backing with adsorbent pad, adhesive, foam pad, etc. These are the different backing membrane we are trying to use. Backing membrane, okay, it will give the physical support to all the formulation. It should be incompatible. Sorry, it should be compatible with the formulation, and it should give good physical stability to the formulation. Hi, today we are going to see about what is zeta potential and also about the electrode double layer. Reason for electrode double layer is if the electrode double layer come into existence, then only zeta potential also generates. Okay, for the zeta potential it is compulsory or it is important for the particle to develop electrode double layer. So before going to that electrode double layer, we will need to see about, or we need to know about, what are the methods through which the particle will get charged. So there are actually three methods by which particle will get charged. Here I am going to speak about the particle which is insoluble. Assume that particle is insoluble, then we will try to see what are the methods through which the particle will get charged. So first method is, when you take the particle and try to put that particle into the water, what happens? Whatever ions present in the water will get adsorbed to the particle. Assume that particle itself doesn't have any ionizable groups. Then what happens? When you insert this particle into the water, whatever ions present in the water will get adsorbed, okay, on the particle. So first method is adsorption of what? Ions. Okay, next, first method through which the particle will get charged is adsorption process. Second method, let's say our water is deionized. Okay, we don't have any ionizable ions present in the water, but our particle has those groups present within it which is ionizing. For example, let's say we have COOH group or we have NH3 group. Okay, yeah, we can say NH2 group. Now what happens, as soon as you put these two groups in the water, now assume that ionizing, it doesn't mean it is completely soluble. They are only partially soluble but imparting charge to the particle. So this particle, which is the particle which I am going to speak about in the next method, has a ionizable group within it. Its chemical nature is it contains a ionizable group. Okay, let's say it is a weak acid. Okay, COH group is there on the particle. As soon as this group goes to come in contact with the water, what happens? This will get ionized to CO minus and H plus. H plus will go away, CO minus will stay with the particle, hence it will impart negative charge to the particle. If this group ionizes, we will get NH3 plus. So now what happens? Due to presence of positive charge, the particle will get positive charge. So ionization. Second process is ionization of groups present within the particle. And I am specifying ionization. It doesn't mean complete ionization. If the particle is ionizing completely, it will solubilize. So here no complete ionization is there, only partial ionization is going to take place. The last method is difference in dielectric constants. Difference in dielectric constant. So now what happens? Let's say our particle is having some dielectric constant and our liquid is having some other dielectric constant. So if there is more difference in the dielectric constant, what happens? This liquid will try to induce ionization on the particle. Okay, so charge is being induced on the particles. So this how in this three way or in this three process our particle is going to get the charge. So when the particle is going to get the charge, next there will be a formation of electrode double layer that we are going to see in the next part. Once the particle gets the charge, now there will be a formation of electrode double layer. We'll try to see how that electrode double layer is going to form. Let's say I have a particle. Okay, I have a particle. I am introducing this particle into water. Let's say the particle may be in colloidal size or it is maybe in suspension like a core size. Okay, assume that I am introducing a particle which is insoluble in water. Okay, and this particle is going to get the charge which I have explained in the previous three methods. In one of the method it is going to get the charge. Let's assume first method, that is adsorption of ions. So when you put this particle into water, water has both type of ions, positive ions and negative ions. So what happens? We assume that negative ions will adsorb and it will impart the charge. So first what happens? Negative ions will adsorb here around the particle. Okay, and they will impart some charge. Whatever these negative ions which are adsorbed there, they are tightly bounded. Okay, what do you mean by tightly bounded? Now assume this is a particle and these are the negative ions which are getting adsorbed on the particle. Now if I move the particle, along with the particle, the outer layer will also move. So this is the first layer which is going to form on the particle. Okay, that is the first layer. Next what happens? We call this layer as Stern layer. So we got the first layer which is tightly bounded. We call that layer as Stern layer. Okay, this plane we call it as Stern layer. Next, as the particle charge is negative, okay, because negative ions are adsorbed, now they try to attract positive ions. So we get the positive ions here, but not along with the positive ions, there will be inflow of negative ions also. So along with the positive ions, negative ions will also come, but in this case the count of positive ions will be more compared to negative ions. Reason, inside we have negative charge, it will repel the excess negative ions which is coming. This will also form a layer. We call it as a diffusion layer. What happens here? Ions will keep on diffusing. So the layer which is above this layer, the plane of diffusion layer, we call it as slipping plane. Slipping plane. So when we have two layers here, one is tightly bounded layer, one is diffusion. We will name it like this. Okay, tightly bounded layer. The layer which is outside, we call it as a diffusion layer. Why you call it as diffusion layer? Why you call it as tightly bounded layer? Because this layer will also move along with the particle, hence we call it as tightly bounded layer. We call this outer layer from here to here. Okay, this layer from here to here, we call it as a diffusion layer because here ions are keep on diffusing. Okay, the planes we call it as Stern layer. Okay, other plane we call it as a slipping plane. and we can call it this also shear layer. Okay, there are many names how we can call it. Okay, now what is zeta potential? Now what happens, first we got negative particle, negative ions absorbing on the particle. This negative will pull the positive, then the positive will pull the negative. Now as we go away from this surface, what happens, at one place we get the positive and negative ion distribution which is equal. So here the distribution of positive and negative ion are equal. Here it is not equal. Here the charge is negative. Okay, as you go away from this, there will be a equal distribution of positive and negative ions. We call that region where the equal distribution of positive and negative ion which is existing above the slipping plane as electroneutral region. Okay, the region where there will be equal distribution of positive and negative ion, and hence because there is a equal distribution of positive and negative ion, that region will be electrically neutral, hence we call it as electroneutral region. Now what is zeta potential? Zeta potential, we can say the definition as, zeta potential is defined as the potential difference between stun layer or tightly bonded layer from here, this layer, to the electroneutral region. We call it as zeta potential. I can show from here. See, the potential difference between the tightly bonded layer and electroneutral region, we call it as zeta potential. Okay, what is the potential difference between? Now what happens here, as soon as the particle try to move, your diffusion layer will go off, it will go away, it will disappear, and the particle will move along with the tightly bonded layer. So overall the charge of the particle is negative, because here adsorption of negative ion occurs. If the positive ions are getting absorbed, we get a positive charge. So particle is moving, your diffusion layer will get disappear. When it stops, again this all process will continue and we will get appearance of diffusion layer. When the particle moves, only tightly bonded layer along with the particle moves, hence the name tightly bonded layer. Okay, what is the use of this? So you know about what is zeta potential, what is electrodouble. What is the use of this? Use is, one, colloids. What are colloids? Any particles which are in nano range, we try to call it as colloids. Okay, so if you want nanoparticles to be stable, you don't want, assume this is a nanoparticle, this is another nanoparticle, you don't want these two particles to come close and form aggregates, because if it come close and form a aggregate, and that aggregate will have a particle size more than the nano range, hence we don't call it as a nanoparticle. For that particles to be called as a nanoparticle, they should be in the nano range. So I want these two particles to should be in the nano range and separate. When I increase zeta potential, what happens? We need to know what do you mean by increase zeta potential? What do you mean by decrease zeta potential? Assume that, okay, assume that we have two particles here. The zeta potential of this particle is more and this particle is more. Now what happens? They will repel from far away distance. They repel from the far away distance. The distance of repelling will be more. If the zeta potential is less, what happens? They will repel from less distance. The distance of repelling will be less. If the zeta potential is more, two particles will repel from the far distance. The zeta potential is less, two particles will repel from the less distance. Now you want your nanoparticle to be staying far away from each other. So what you will try to do? You try to increase the zeta potential of your nanoparticles. Now what happens? They will come close, because they have more zeta potential, they will repel from the far distance and they never form an aggregate. Hence our colloids or nanoparticles will be stable. If you want your colloid or nanoparticle to be stable, try to keep more and more zeta potential. Okay, it may be positive or negative, they should repel. Okay, positive zeta potential, negative zeta potential. It doesn't mean that positive and negative zeta potential will exist in the same system. No, either you get positive zeta potential in a system or you get negative zeta potential in a system. Next is suspension. Let's say flocculated. Okay, to know about what I am going to give the information here. You need to check my DL Weaver theory video. I will try to give in the iCard. Go and check there. I clearly explain what is the implications of your zeta potential and the particle distance. Okay, in case of suspension, if you need the suspension to be flocculated, now what happens? Flocculated means particles came close and form an aggregate. For the particles to form an aggregate, obviously you need zeta potential to be very less. If you keep less zeta potential, you will get flocculated system. Okay, if the zeta potential is more, add a electrolyte which is in opposite charge to the zeta potential. Let's say your zeta potential is positive, add negative electrolyte. If zeta potential is negative, add positive electrolyte, so that your deflocculated system of suspension will be converted into flocculated by the decreasing of zeta potential. Okay, this is how you can use zeta potential in case of colloids and suspension. Colloids, you want to stabilize the colloids, use more zeta potential. If you want flocculated system, use less zeta potential. If you want deflocculated, no problem, use more zeta potential system. So this is how we can understand what is zeta potential, electro double layer, and the charge on the particle. I hope you understand. Thank you.